The billionaire's fairytale wedding turned into chaos after a poor little girl appeared. The ballroom doors burst open with a sound that silenced 500 guests mid-conversation. A little girl stood in the doorway, her dress torn at the hem, shoes 2 sizes too small, eyes wide with terror and determination. She was trembling, but her voice cut through the crystal chandeliered space like a knife. "I need Mr. Fred Clayton. It's about my mama." Security moved toward her, but the groom, resplendent in his $10,000 tuxedo, held up his hand. "I'm Fred Clayton. What's your name, sweetheart?" "Ruby. Ruby Pierce. My mama is Natasha Pierce. She worked for you 4 years ago in Denver before she got the cancer. She died last week." The gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. The bride, halfway down the grand staircase in her Vera Wang gown, froze, and in the shadows near the kitchen entrance, a woman in a navy suit felt her heart stop. Sylvia Maurice had come to this wedding for closure. She was about to get chaos instead. "I'm very sorry about your mother." Fred's voice was gentle, controlled, the voice of a man used to handling crises. "But I'm not sure how I can help you right now. This isn't really the best time." Ruby's small hand clutched an envelope so tightly it was crumpling. "Mama said if anything happened to her, I should find you. She said you were a good man. She said you'd help because—" Her voice broke, but she pushed through. "Because you're my daddy." The silence that followed was suffocating. Somewhere in the back, a phone clattered to the marble floor. The bride's hand flew to her mouth, and Fred Clayton, billionaire tech mogul, man who'd built a $12 billion empire on the foundation of never losing his composure, went absolutely pale. "That's not possible. I never. She has your birthday written in her Bible." Ruby's voice was getting smaller, more frightened, but she kept going. "March 15th. She has pictures of you from when you visited the Denver office. She told me you had a scar on your left shoulder from a skiing accident when you were 12. She said you drink your coffee black with 1 sugar, and you hate strawberries because they make your tongue itch." The specific details landed like bombs. Fred's hand moved unconsciously to his left shoulder. The crowd leaned in, hungry for scandal, for drama, for the kind of story they'd tell at dinner parties for years. "When's your birthday, Ruby?" "March 28th. I just turned 7. The math was simple enough. 7 years old meant conception roughly 7.5 years ago. 6 months before Fred had even met Sylvia Maurice. 6 months before the 18-month relationship that had ended in heartbreak and her fleeing to build a life anywhere he wasn't. Sylvia watched this unfold with the strangest sense of detachment, like watching a play where she somehow knew all the lines despite never reading the script. She should leave. Should walk out the kitchen entrance, get in her car, drive back to a restaurant, and forget she'd ever agreed to cater her ex-boyfriend's wedding. This wasn't her problem. This wasn't her chaos. But the little girl was shaking now, holding out the envelope with both hands, and something in Sylvia's chest cracked open despite 4 years of carefully constructed armor. Have you ever watched someone you once loved have their entire life implode in front of 500 witnesses? Have you ever seen a 7-year-old child stand alone in a room full of strangers, betting everything on the hope that one of them might care enough to help? Have you ever had your carefully planned day of closure turn into the most complicated situation you never asked to be part of? This is the story of how one uninvited child turned a fairy tale wedding into chaos, exposed secrets that should have stayed buried, and forced 3 broken people to choose between running away and showing up for something bigger than their own pain. What happened next didn't just stop a wedding. It changed 3 lives forever. And the woman caught in the middle? She was the last person who should have stayed. But sometimes the hardest choice is the one that saves us. If you believe in messy second chances and families built from impossible circumstances, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Mr. Kingsley Luck's stories for more life-changing tales about real people facing choices that define who they become. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this unfolds. Now let me take you back to 6 hours earlier, before the chaos, before Ruby, before everything fell apart. Because to understand why Sylvia Maurice made the choices she did, you need to understand what brought her to that ballroom in the first place. The invitation had come 3 weeks prior. Not a wedding invitation, a business proposition. Fred Clayton's assistant had called Maurice's table, the 3 Michelin star restaurant that Sylvia had built from nothing, and made a request that sounded more like a royal summons. "Mr. Clayton specifically wants you to cater his wedding reception. He's reviewed your work, and he feels your aesthetic matches his vision for the event. Money is no object. He's offering triple your usual rate." Sylvia should have said no. Should have claimed the date was already booked, that her schedule was full, that catering weddings wasn't really their specialty anyway. But she'd said yes before her business sense could override her broken heart's twisted need for closure. She told herself it was about the money, about the prestige of catering a billionaire's wedding, about the exposure for her restaurant. She told herself she was over Fred Clayton, that 4 years was long enough to heal from 18 months of loving someone who couldn't love her back the way she needed. She told herself a lot of lies in those 3 weeks leading up to the wedding. Now she stood in the Grandmont Hotel's pristine ballroom, 6 hours before the ceremony, watching her staff arrange appetizer stations and trying very hard not to remember the last time she'd been in Fred's arms. The chandeliers overhead cost $3 million. The flower arrangements were flown in from Ecuador. The cake was a architectural marvel of sugar and dreams that cost more than Sylvia's first car. Everything was perfect, exactly the kind of controlled, expensive perfection that Fred had always excelled at. The kind that looked beautiful in photographs but felt hollow when you got close enough to see the seams. Miss Maurice. Her sous chef James appeared at her elbow with a tablet. The halibut course needs your final approval, and the bride's representative is asking about the wine pairing for table 7. Send them the pairing we discussed, and tell the bride's rep that everything is exactly as specified. No changes, no surprises. You okay, boss? James had worked with her long enough to read the micro-expressions she thought she was hiding. I'm fine. This is just another event. Right. And I'm the King of England. Before Sylvia could respond, the ballroom doors opened. Fred Clayton walked in, and 4 years of careful emotional distance evaporated like morning fog. He looked the same, different, older in subtle ways that somehow made it worse. The silver at his temples was more pronounced now, giving him that distinguished look that wealthy men wore like a badge of honor. His suit was Tom Ford, perfectly tailored to his frame. He moved through the space like he owned it, which technically he did for the day, with the kind of confidence that came from never having to wonder if he belonged. But it was his eyes that caught her, the same dark brown that used to look at her like she was the only person in the world. Right before he'd check his phone, take a call, prioritize another meeting over another dinner together, he was scanning the room, probably checking details with his compulsive need for perfection. Then his gaze landed on her, and for exactly 3 seconds, his composure shattered. 3 seconds of recognition, shock, something that looked like pain or longing, or the complicated tangle of both. Then his public face clicked back into place, and he was walking toward her with measured steps. Sylvia. His voice was exactly as she remembered, deep, controlled, with that slight rasp from too many late nights. I didn't think you'd actually come. You requested me specifically. She kept her voice professional, despite her racing heart. I don't turn down jobs, even when the job means watching me marry someone else. The directness caught her off guard. This wasn't the Fred she remembered, who'd hidden vulnerability behind walls of ambition and carefully maintained distance. Even then, I'm a professional. Your wedding reception will be flawless. I don't care about the food. Then why did you hire me? Fred's jaw tightened. You know why. She did. Of course she did. For the same reason she'd accepted. Because unfinished stories have gravity. Because 4 years of silence hadn't erased anything, just buried it. Because some part of him needed to see if she'd come, and some part of her needed to prove she could survive it. Mr. Clayton? A wedding planner materialized, tablet clutched like a life raft, expression frantic. We have a situation. The officiant is running 20 minutes late, and your fiancé is asking if you can. I'll handle it. Fred's attention stayed locked on Sylvia. Give me 5 minutes. Sir, the ceremony starts in 15. 5 minutes. The quiet authority in his voice ended the discussion. The wedding planner scurried away. Sylvia crossed her arms. You should handle your situation. I have a kitchen to run. Sylvia, wait. Fred's hand moved like he wanted to touch her, then fell back. I need to know. Are you happy? Did you find what you were looking for when you left? The question felt like a physical blow. Because yes, she'd built everything she'd dreamed of. Maurice's table was critically acclaimed, financially successful, creatively fulfilling. She employed 23 people, had a waiting list 6 months long, had earned respect in an industry that didn't give it easily. She'd proven she could survive without him, could thrive alone, could build an empire entirely her own. But happy? That was a question with a much more complicated answer. I found success. Her words were careful, measured. I found purpose. I built a life that matters. That's not what I asked. It's the answer you're getting. Fred, you're getting married in 13 minutes. This isn't the time for... That's when the doors had burst open. That's when Ruby had appeared, small and terrified and desperate. That's when everything had exploded. Now, standing in the aftermath of Ruby's announcement, Sylvia watched Fred take the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter, multiple pages in careful handwriting, and a photograph. Fred stared at the photo for a long moment, and something in his expression completely shattered. The letter. Ruby's voice was barely a whisper now. Mama wrote it before she died. She said it explains everything. She said to tell you she's sorry she didn't try harder, but she didn't want to ruin your life. Fred looked up at his bride, still frozen on the staircase. Looked at the 500 guests, watching this disaster unfold with barely concealed fascination. Looked at Ruby, this child claiming to be his daughter. Looked at Sylvia. I need to read this. His voice was hoarse. Vanessa, I'm sorry, but I need a moment. A moment? The bride found her voice, high and tight. Fred, we're getting married. Right now. In front of everyone. You can't just... I know what this looks like. But if there's even a chance this child is telling the truth, I need to know before I make vows. I need to understand. What? She says you're her father. Vanessa's voice cracked. In front of our entire wedding. And you're actually considering. I'm considering that a 7-year-old girl just told me her mother died and she has nowhere else to go. Yes, I'm considering that before I walk down an aisle. The bride stared at him for a long moment, her face cycling through shock, hurt, fury, humiliation. Then she turned and walked back up the staircase, the train of her dress dragging behind her like a white flag of surrender. The crowd erupted in whispers. Phones appeared, capturing every moment. This would be on social media within minutes. Billionaire's wedding disrupted by secret love child. The headlines were writing themselves. And Ruby stood alone in the center of it all, trembling, clutching her envelope, looking like she was about to shatter. Sylvia moved before her brain authorized the decision. Ruby. She kept her voice gentle, approaching slowly. I'm Sylvia. I'm a friend of Mr. Clayton's. Have you eaten today? Ruby shook her head. Would you like to come with me to the kitchen? We have food, and it's quiet, and you can sit while the adults figure things out. Ruby looked to Fred for permission. He nodded, gratitude flooding his face. Go with Sylvia. You're safe here, Ruby. I promise. I just need to read your mother's letter, and then we'll talk. Okay? You won't leave. Ruby's fear was sharp and clear. You won't disappear like people do? I won't leave. The promise in Fred's voice was absolute. I'll come find you as soon as I've read this. Sylvia will take care of you until then. Sylvia extended her hand. Ruby stared at it for a moment, then took it with fingers that were ice cold despite the warmth of the ballroom. The walk to the kitchen felt endless. Every eye in that ballroom followed them. Every whispered speculation, every camera phone, every guest who'd come for a fairy tale and gotten a scandal instead. Ruby was so small, too thin, the kind of thin that spoke of missed meals and hard times. Her dress was clean but worn, the fabric pilled from too many washings. Her shoes were scuffed, the soles separating slightly at the toe. Everything about her screamed struggle, survival, a childhood that had been harder than any child should be. In the kitchen, Sylvia's staff had stopped working, aware something dramatic was happening but professional enough not to ask. She guided Ruby to a stool at the prep counter and assembled a plate. Nothing too heavy, just bread and cheese and fruit that wouldn't upset a nervous stomach. Eat slowly. When was the last time you had a real meal? Yesterday morning. Ruby took a small bite of bread, chewing carefully. Miss Lorraine gave me breakfast before I left. Miss Lorraine? Mama's friend. She's been letting me stay with her since Mama died. But she's moving to Arizona next week to live with her daughter, and she can't take me. She said I needed to find family or they'd put me in the system. So, I came to find my daddy. You've been looking for him since yesterday morning? Ruby nodded, taking another small bite. Miss Lorraine gave me his address, but when I went there, the security people wouldn't let me in. They said Mr. Clayton wasn't home and I should leave. So I looked him up on Miss Lorraine's computer, and it said he was getting married today. At this hotel. I took 3 buses to get here. 7 years old. Alone in the city. Taking 3 buses across Denver to find a father she'd never met. betting everything on a mother's promise that he was a good man who'd help. The courage of it made Sylvia's throat tight. That was very brave, also very dangerous. You could have been hurt. I know. Mama always said I shouldn't talk to strangers or go places alone. But she also said if anything happened to her, Mr. Clayton would help. She said he was a good man who made mistakes like everyone does, but his heart was kind underneath all the busy. Ruby's eyes filled with tears. She was clearly fighting. Is he a good man? Before we continue with this question that cuts to the heart of everything, before I tell you how Sylvia answered and what happened when Fred read that letter, I need to pause and speak directly to you. You're watching this story unfold because something about it resonates. Maybe you've loved someone who couldn't love you back the way you needed. Maybe you faced an impossible choice between protecting yourself and helping someone who needed you. Maybe you're just trying to understand if people can really change, if broken things can be fixed, if second chances are real or just pretty lies we tell ourselves. If this story is speaking to you, if you're feeling invested in Ruby's fate and wondering whether Fred will step up or run, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button right now. Share this with someone who needs to believe that sometimes chaos is just the universe rearranging things into their right places. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have helped Ruby? Would you have walked away? Your voice matters in this community we're building. Now back to that kitchen, where a little girl is asking if the man who might be her father is good, and the woman who once loved him has to decide how to answer. Is he a good man? Sylvia looked at this child, this brave, terrified little girl who'd lost everything and was gambling on a stranger's kindness. She could tell Ruby the truth, that Fred Clayton was complicated, that he'd chosen ambition over love, that he'd broken her heart by prioritizing board meetings over their relationship, that he was brilliant and driven and so focused on building his empire that he forgot to build a life. But Ruby didn't need brutal honesty. She needed hope. He's a complicated man. Sylvia chose her words carefully. He works very hard, and sometimes that makes him forget other important things. But I think he tries to do the right thing, even when it's difficult. I think when he makes a promise, he keeps it. Did he promise Mama he'd take care of me? I don't know what he promised your Mama, but I do know that he stopped his own wedding to listen to you. That means something. Ruby nodded slowly, processing this information with the serious consideration of someone much older than 7. She took another bite of cheese. You're pretty, like the lady in the white dress, but different. You look like you know how to fix things. What makes you say that? Mama was a fixer. She could look at broken stuff and see how to make it work again. Not just things, people too. She said the best people were the ones who knew how broken felt, because they didn't give up on other broken things. You have fixer eyes. Before Sylvia could respond to this uncomfortably accurate assessment from a 7-year-old, the kitchen door swung open. Fred stood in the doorway. The letter was crushed in his fist. His face was wrecked, tears streaming down unchecked, his careful composure completely destroyed. She's mine. His voice broke on the words. The letter has dates, details, things only Natasha could know. Medical records, hospital bills from when Ruby was born with my name listed as father. She tried to reach me 7.5 years ago when she found out she was pregnant and I was in Tokyo closing a deal. My assistant screened her calls. She tried again when Ruby was 2 and I was in London and my team was instructed not to disturb me for anything non-critical. She tried one more time when Ruby was 4, sent a letter to my office that probably got buried with 1,000 other pieces of mail I never saw. He crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and dropped to his knees in front of Ruby. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Your mother tried to tell me, and I didn't listen. I was too busy, too focused on work, too caught up in building my company to pay attention. I missed everything. I missed you. Ruby stared at him with wide eyes. So you really are my daddy? If your mother's letter is accurate, and I believe it is, then yes, I'm your father. I know I haven't been there for you. I know I missed 7 years. But if you'll let me, I'd like to change that. I'd like to be your dad now, if you're willing to give me the chance. What about your wedding, the pretty lady in the white dress? Fred closed his eyes briefly. I need to have a conversation with her. But Ruby, I want you to understand something. You showing up here, you finding me, this is the most important thing that's happened in a very long time. You're not interrupting my life. You're changing it in a way it needed to be changed. Sylvia watched this unfold, her heart doing complicated acrobatics in her chest. This was the Fred she'd fallen in love with. The one capable of raw emotion, of prioritizing people over prestige, of making the hard choice when it mattered. He just never made that choice for her. Sylvia? Fred looked up, his face vulnerable in ways she'd never seen. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but could you stay with Ruby while I talk to Vanessa? Just until I figure out next steps? I'll stay with her. Take the time you need. The gratitude in his eyes was almost painful to witness. Thank you. For this. For helping when you had every reason to walk away. After he left, Sylvia sat with Ruby at the prep counter. The kitchen staff worked quietly around them, pretending not to listen while absolutely listening to every word. Tell me about your mama. Sylvia kept her voice gentle. She was the best. Ruby's voice was soft, wistful. She worked really hard. 2 jobs sometimes. She cleaned offices at night and worked at a bakery during the day. But she always read me stories before bed, even when she was tired. And she made the best chocolate chip cookies. She said the secret was brown butter and a tiny bit of sea salt. She sounds wonderful. She was. Ruby's eyes filled with tears. She got sick when I was 5. Cancer. It went away for a while, and we thought she was better. But then it came back last year, and this time the doctors said there wasn't anything else they could do. She tried really hard to stay, but her body just got too tired. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. She talked about my daddy sometimes, said he was smart and kind and worked really hard to help people. She said she loved him, but the timing was wrong, and sometimes life is like that. She said he didn't know about me because she never got the chance to tell him properly, and by the time she tried, he was too far away and too important to reach. But she said if I ever needed help, I should find him, because he'd do the right thing. Tears were streaming down Ruby's face now. Sylvia pulled her into a hug, and the little girl dissolved into sobs against her shoulder. All the terror and grief and exhaustion finally breaking through. They stayed like that for a long time. James quietly brought over a box of tissues. The other staff members worked around them with careful respect for this small person's enormous grief. When Ruby finally pulled back, her eyes were red and swollen. What if he changes his mind? What if he reads the letter and decides he doesn't want me after all? He won't. How do you know? Because I saw his face when he realized you were his daughter. That wasn't the face of someone who's going to walk away. That was the face of someone whose entire world just rearranged itself. Do you know him? Like, really know him? Sylvia hesitated, then decided on honesty. I used to. We were together, him and me, about 4 years ago, before things got complicated. What happened? He chose his work over our relationship. He was building his company, and I needed him to make space for both. He couldn't. So, I left. Do you still love him? The question was so direct, so innocent, so impossible to answer dishonestly. It's complicated. I loved who he was when we were together. I don't know who he is now. People change, or they don't. Time will tell which one he is. Ruby nodded sagely, like this made perfect sense. Mama said love is choice, not feeling. She said, feelings come and go, but choice is what makes it real. Your mama was very wise. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Ruby ate slowly, her appetite returning as the immediate crisis passed. Sylvia's mind raced through logistics. What would happen next? Where would Ruby go? What would Fred do with a 7-year-old daughter he'd never known existed? The kitchen door opened again. Fred entered, looking exhausted. Behind him was a woman in professional attire, carrying a briefcase. Ruby, Sylvia, this is Patricia Moreno. She's a social worker. I called her to help us figure out the right way to handle this situation. Patricia smiled warmly at Ruby. Hello, Ruby. Your father told me what happened. I'm so sorry about your mother. I know this must be very scary. Ruby nodded, moving closer to Sylvia instinctively. What's going to happen to me? Well, that depends on several things. Patricia pulled out a tablet. Your mother's letter designated Mr. Clayton as your father and requested that he take custody of you. We'll need to verify that with a DNA test, but given the documentation your mother provided, I'm comfortable placing you in his temporary custody immediately. The question is whether Mr. Clayton is prepared to take on the responsibility of a 7-year-old child who's experienced significant trauma. I am. Fred's voice was firm, absolute. Whatever Ruby needs. DNA test, background checks, home studies, therapy, all of it. I'll restructure my work schedule. I'll hire support staff, whatever it takes. Do you have a partner who can help provide stability? Patricia's question was clinical, professional. Fred's eyes flicked to Sylvia. No. My engagement ended about an hour ago, but I have resources. I can hire the best child psychologist in Colorado. I can provide everything she needs materially. I don't want a nanny." Ruby's voice was small but stubborn. "I want Sylvia." Everyone turned to stare at her. "Ruby, I'm just someone who helped you tonight." Sylvia kept her voice gentle. "I'm not. You're nice." Ruby's logic was pure 7-year-old certainty. "You gave me food and hugged me when I cried, and you smell like vanilla and cinnamon like Mama's kitchen used to. I don't want some stranger taking care of me. I want you." Sylvia looked helplessly at Fred. "I can't ask you to do this." His voice was quiet, careful. "You have your restaurant, your life. This isn't your responsibility." He was right. This was categorically not her responsibility. She should politely decline, offer to help Fred find excellent childcare, and return to her perfectly constructed life that didn't include her ex-boyfriend's surprised daughter. But Ruby was looking at her with those hope-filled eyes, and Sylvia remembered being young and scared, and desperately needing someone to choose her. "I can't move in or become a permanent caretaker." The words came out before she'd fully decided to say them. "But I could help with the transition. Spend some time with Ruby over the next few weeks while Fred gets things organized, just until she feels more settled." Ruby's face lit up like Sylvia had promised her the moon. Patricia outlined the next steps. DNA test Monday morning at a lab she'd arrange. Temporary custody paperwork. Therapy referrals. Ruby would stay with Fred starting tonight, with Sylvia's phone number as an emergency contact. Through it all, Ruby stayed close to Sylvia, occasionally reaching for her hand like checking she was still real. When Patricia finally left, it was nearly 8 o'clock. The wedding that should have been happening was long canceled. The guests had dispersed hours ago, phones full of photos and speculation. The bride had left through a back entrance with her family, humiliated and furious. And Fred Clayton stood in his kitchen suite with a daughter he'd just met, and a woman he'd lost 4 years ago, trying to figure out how to navigate this impossible situation. "Ruby," Fred's voice was gentle, "I have guest rooms here in the suite. You can sleep, and I promise I'll be right here when you wake up." "Can Sylvia stay too?" Ruby's question was immediate. Panicked. "Just for tonight? I don't want to be alone with strangers yet." "Ruby, I'm sure Sylvia needs to get home," Fred began. "Please." Ruby's voice was very small. "Just tonight." Sylvia met Fred's eyes over Ruby's head. The request was reasonable from a traumatized child's perspective, completely unreasonable from two people with complicated history trying to maintain boundaries. "I'll stay on the couch. Just for tonight." Ruby fell asleep within 20 minutes of lying down in one of the guest bedrooms, exhaustion finally overcoming terror. Sylvia tucked the blanket around her thin shoulders, studying her face in the dim light, looking for traces of Fred in the shape of her nose, the curve of her chin. In the living room, Fred was pouring whiskey with shaking hands. "I called off my wedding." He said it without preamble, staring at the amber liquid. Vanessa was angry, hurt, humiliated, all justified. She said she couldn't marry someone with such complicated, unfinished business. She was right. "I'm sorry. I'm not." Fred took a long drink. "That's the worst part. My wedding day ended in disaster, and all I feel is relief. Because it means I didn't marry someone I wasn't completely sure about. What kind of person does that make me? Human." Fred set down his glass and looked at her directly. "Why did I really ask you to cater my wedding, Sylvia? You tell me. Because I needed to see you one more time before I made a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. Because some part of me hoped you'd object, make a scene, give me an excuse to call it off. That's not fair to Vanessa, or to me. I know. Nothing about today has been fair to anyone." He moved closer. "Sylvia, when you left 4 years ago, you said I was choosing work over us. You were right. I was building an empire and treating our relationship like something I could schedule around important meetings. I lost you because I was too stubborn and too scared to admit I needed to change. And now I have a 7-year-old daughter who needs me to be completely different than I've ever been, who needs me to show up consistently, who needs me to prioritize her over acquisitions and board meetings." He laughed bitterly. "It took losing you and finding her to understand what you were trying to tell me. People don't change overnight, Fred. No. But crisis clarifies priorities fast." He studied her face. "I'm not asking you to forgive me or give me another chance. I know I destroyed that. But you were right about everything 4 years ago. And I'm sorry I didn't see it until it was too late. The apology hung in the air between them. Genuine. Painful. 4 years overdue. I need to leave. Sylvia stood abruptly. This is too much. You and Ruby need time to bond, and I can't. Please don't run. Not yet. Ruby needs you. She's lost everything, and for some reason she feels safe with you. I know I have no right to ask you to stay involved, but I'm asking anyway. Not for me, for her. And there it was. The impossible choice. Protect herself and abandon a child who'd been abandoned too many times, or stay and risk everything she'd built to keep her heart safe. We're at the turning point now, the moment where 3 broken people stand at a crossroads. Can people really change, or do they just promise to? Can trust be rebuilt after it's been shattered? Can a family be built from chaos and broken pieces? If you're invested in finding out whether Fred proves himself or disappoints them both, whether Sylvia risks her heart again or protects herself, whether Ruby gets the father she deserves, I need you to act right now. Smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Comment below and tell me, do you believe people can truly change? Have you ever given someone a second chance? What happened? Your stories matter to this community. Share this video with someone navigating impossible choices, someone afraid to trust again, someone who needs to believe broken things can become beautiful. Now, let's find out what Sylvia decides. I'll stay. The words came out quiet but firm. But Fred, I need you to understand. I'm doing this for Ruby, not for us. There is no us. That ended 4 years ago. I understand. But something in his expression suggested he didn't quite believe it. The next few weeks were controlled chaos. The DNA test confirmed what the letter claimed. Ruby was Fred's biological daughter. Legal custody was granted with surprising speed, helped by Fred's resources and Natasha's clear documentation. And Sylvia, despite every intention to maintain distance, found herself woven into their emerging family. She taught Ruby to cook, discovering the little girl had her mother's patience and instinct for flavors. She stayed for dinners that turned into bedtime stories. She was there when Ruby woke up screaming from nightmares about her mother, holding her until the terror passed. She was falling in love with a 7-year-old who'd lost everything and kept choosing hope anyway. And Fred was changing in ways impossible to ignore. He restructured his entire company, delegating responsibilities he'd once insisted only he could handle. He left work at 5 o'clock sharp to make Ruby's dinner. He learned to braid hair through YouTube tutorials, his large hands fumbling with small elastics until he got it right. He showed up for parent-teacher conferences with the same intensity he'd once reserved for board meetings. He was becoming the man Sylvia had needed him to be 4 years ago. 3 months after Ruby's arrival, Sylvia was in Fred's kitchen teaching Ruby to make pasta from scratch. The little girl's tongue stuck out in concentration as she kneaded dough exactly as instructed. "Can I talk to you?" Fred appeared in the doorway. "Ruby, keep kneading just like Sylvia showed you. We'll be right back." On the balcony overlooking Denver's skyline, Fred turned to face her. "I need to tell you something. Hear all of it before you respond." Sylvia's heart raced, but she nodded. 4 years ago I lost you because I was too afraid to prioritize our relationship over my ambition. I told myself success would be enough. I was wrong. When Ruby appeared, when I saw what I'd missed by being too busy and self-absorbed, I finally understood what you tried to tell me. He stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. "You saved me, Sylvia. Not 4 years ago. Now. You showed up when you didn't have to, and you helped me become the father Ruby deserves. You taught me that showing up matters more than achieving. That presence is the greatest gift." "Fred, let me finish. I'm not asking you to forgive me or pick up where we left off. I'm asking if you'd consider staying. Not as Ruby's helper or my ex-girlfriend doing a favor, but as someone building a life with us, whatever that looks like. However long it takes to earn your trust." Sylvia looked through the window at Ruby, carefully working her dough. "I'm scared. You hurt me badly, Fred. I built walls specifically to keep you out, and somehow you've gotten back inside anyway. I know. I will spend however long it takes proving I've changed. Not with words, with action. Every single day, choosing you and Ruby over everything else. And if I say no," pain flashed across his face, "then I respect that. Ruby stays regardless. She's my daughter. But Sylvia, I love you. I loved you 4 years ago and was too stupid to fight for us. I love you now, and I'm finally brave enough to say it. Through the window, Ruby looked up and waved, her smile uncomplicated and bright. I love her. Sylvia's voice was quiet. I didn't mean to, but I do. I know. She loves you too. She asked me last week if you could be her second mom. Sylvia's eyes filled with tears. She did? She did. I told her that was something the three of us would need to figure out together. If you're willing. The future stretched, uncertain and complicated, nothing like the fairy tale she'd once imagined, but real in ways fairy tales never were. I'm terrified. Me too. If we do this, if I stay, you have to promise me something. No more choosing work over people. No more making us fit around your schedule. We're the priority, or this doesn't work. I promise. You and Ruby are everything. The work is just work. And if you mess this up, if you hurt me again or let Ruby down, there won't be another chance. I understand. I won't mess it up. Sylvia studied his face, looking for cracks in the sincerity. Found only hope and fear and desperate love. Okay, let's try. Slowly. No rushing. Just showing up consistently and seeing if we can build something real. The smile that transformed Fred's face was pure joy. Yes, anything you need. Whatever pace you set. He moved to kiss her, but she held up a hand. Not yet. You have to earn that too. Fair enough. They returned to the kitchen. Ruby looked up immediately. Did you ask her? Did she say yes? We're going to try spending more time together as a family, Fred explained carefully. Is that okay with you? Ruby launched herself at Sylvia with uncomplicated joy. You're staying. You're really staying. I'm staying. Sylvia hugged her back. And meant it. 6 months later, on a quiet Tuesday evening, the three of them moved around Fred's kitchen with easy choreography. Ruby chattered about her school day. Fred chopped vegetables. Sylvia stirred sauce. They bumped into each other and laughed and felt like family. I love this, Ruby announced suddenly. I miss Mama every single day, but I love that I have you both now. Fred's eyes met Sylvia's over Ruby's head. In that look was everything. Gratitude. Love. Hope. The quiet recognition that they'd built something beautiful from chaos. We love you too, sweetheart, Sylvia said. Later, after Ruby was asleep, Fred finally got the kiss he'd waited 6 months to earn. It was gentle and careful, and tasted like second chances and hard-won trust. Thank you, he whispered, for giving me the chance to be better, for showing Ruby what love looks like, for staying when you could have run. Thank you for changing, for proving people can grow, for becoming the man I needed. They didn't live happily ever after, because real life doesn't work that way, but they lived intentionally, choosing each other daily, building family from wreckage, proving that sometimes the worst moments become doorways to better lives, that sometimes the interruption is the blessing, that love built on choice and daily commitment is stronger than any fairy tale. Here's what this story teaches us. First, people can change, but only through sustained action, not pretty words. Fred didn't transform overnight. He proved himself through 6 months of consistent choices. Second, crisis clarifies what actually matters. Ruby's appearance forced Fred to evaluate his priorities and choose differently. Third, vulnerability is strength. Sylvia risking her heart again. Fred admitting his failures. Ruby's courage to seek help. All of it required bravery. Fourth, family is built, not just born. 3 strangers became family through choice and commitment. And fifth, second chances must be earned through action, not granted freely. In a world obsessed with fairy tale endings, we forget that real love is messier, harder, and more beautiful than any story. Ruby lost her mother but found a family. Fred lost his wedding but found his purpose. Sylvia risked her heart but gained everything. Sometimes the worst moments become the best things that ever happened to us. Sometimes what looks like chaos is just life rearranging itself into the right shape. If this story moved you, I need you to act. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances earned through real change. Your like tells the algorithm to share this story with people who need to hear it. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever gotten a second chance you didn't deserve, or given one to someone who hurt you? What happened? I read every single comment, and your stories inspire the next ones I tell. Subscribe to Mr. Kingsley Luck's stories and turn on notifications, because every week I bring you true stories about real people facing impossible choices. Stories that will make you laugh, cry, think differently, maybe even change your life. Share this video with someone navigating a complicated relationship, someone afraid to trust again, someone who needs to believe broken things can be rebuilt into something beautiful. Remember this: life doesn't give us fairy tales, it gives us choices. And sometimes the brave choice, the scary choice to stay when running would be easier, that's the choice that changes everything. The choice to show up, to be present, to choose love, even when love has hurt you before. That's the choice that builds real, lasting, beautiful things. I'm Mr. Kingsley, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, choose love, choose presence, choose second chances when they're earned through action, not just promised through words. Choose to show up for the people who need you, even when it's terrifying. Because that's how broken people become whole. That's how chaos becomes family. That's how endings become beginnings. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for believing in messy, complicated, real human stories. Thank you for watching.